Hi there, and welcome to the Homestead Education Podcast. Do you have a homestead, farm, or just dream of a rural life? This is a show to help you and your kids grow your own food and grow as a person. I'm your host, Kody Hanner. I'm a homesteader, homeschool mom of six, and small town enthusiast. I was raised by an old school rancher and blessed by the grace of God to have been exposed to so much of what rural life has to offer. Join me every week to talk about homesteading, homeschooling, and growth with a homestead education. Hey everyone, welcome back. Today I have a guest named Gregg Forster. He's from Wisconsin Mineral Solutions, and he's here to talk to us about how to get nutrient-dense foods through our soils. So welcome, Greg.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here.
So do you want to tell everyone a little bit about yourself, your business, what you do?
Sure. Well, I have a Bachelor of Science degree in physics, which originally I was putting to use in the world of software engineering.
That sounds
And
boring.
sometimes it was, sometimes not. I did that for about 20 years. And through downsizing and things like that, that all of a sudden wasn't a career path for me. And I did end up using that a little bit in the world of indoor air quality for a while
Oh
too.
yeah.
But eventually that got focused in on what's going on in the soil and how to produce healthier food um, based on healthier soil. So about just over 14 years ago, I formed the company called Wisconsin Mineral Solutions. And we have a goal of helping people to better understand the soil and to understand not only how it works, but more importantly for most of us, what the implications of healthy soil is and how healthy soil can lead to healthier crops, and healthier crops are eaten either by people or animals. And so we can have healthier livestock, healthier meat, healthier eggs, and ultimately healthier people. And I do think that um, you really have to be in a pretty good state of health to make good, wise decisions. And when people are sick, it affects so many parts of our being that life can become pretty difficult, even in relationships and things like that, when we're not getting the right kind of nutrients into our bodies. So that's one thing that's really important for me is not just, I don't just care about the soil, I care about human beings and how we can have a much more robust life when we kind of pay attention to the foundation of things.
I really love how you put that because I think there's been a whole new thought process over the last few years of what sick is. I
Mm-hmm.
think at one point it was just, like you have a disease or you don't have a disease, versus now so many people are seeing that we can just kind of be sick overall through our gut health and our nutrient densities and how that affects our brain and all of that. And so I
Right.
think, even as somebody who, I mean, I've been a producer my whole life. Yeah, I always thought about, if my soil isn't healthy, then my plants don't grow. And that if my soil isn't healthy, I don't grow plants to feed my cows. But I don't know that I ever really like put that connection together of the quality of your soil is going to affect the quality of what you're eating.
Right. Right.
So, what do you see as a reason why we have such depleted soil? I mean, I think there's some of the real obvious ones, but I'd like to kind of discuss that, especially on some of the smaller scales.
Right. Right. Because I think a lot of times we think if we're growing our own food, we must be doing a really good job or at least a better job than
I
if we
still
were
think it's
buying it.
probably a better job.
Yeah, unless we're copying
There,
the big
yeah,
eggs practices and
true.
using some of the same tools that they are. And sometimes that's just the norm. It's where people look for answers.
And
And
that's all the information that's out there.
yeah, fortunately, more and more good information is available, but you do have to look hard for it. And if you're attending different conferences, like maybe the Acres USA conference or what used to be called the Moses Conference, Marble Seed, and other events like that, where people are sharing some of that information, then yeah, you can make some great decisions. But you do have to have knowledge at some level to be able to make wise decisions like that.
Hey guys, I know that we are always looking for ways to connect our homeschool kids with our communities and find things to do when we're out and about. Plus, it is so important to be connecting with like-minded families and those that have the same interests that we do. That's why I'm so excited to announce the new app that just launched. Basecamp Ed is a community-based platform for parents to find like-minded families and dedicated teachers in their area. Whether you homeschool your children, are curious about it, or simply want to build a community of extracurricular activities, Basecamp Ed has you covered. Connect with local parents to create co ops, form groups for your children's interests, and use the calendar to schedule events with ease. Teachers and coaches can also create profiles to list their credentials for parents to find a way to supplement subjects and activities. Homeschooling was never meant to be done alone. It takes a village. Build it with Basecamp Ed. Take advantage of this free resource and download it today. You can also follow them on Instagram and Facebook at Basecamp Ed app for the latest updates. And you can get the link to that in the show notes for this episode. I definitely agree. So, um, what are some of the practices that maybe like kind of the small scale farmer or a new farmer might be doing that would be depleting the soils?
Well, I have a rototiller and I use it, but I'm kind of ashamed of that.
I use mine too.
Um, and every time that we work the soil aggressively, it is damaging to the microbial activity. Um, and we need to have soil that is like in aggregates and chunks, basically, so that there's lots of air space in there for the microbes to function. And generally, in the top 6 inches of the soil, um, that's mostly aerobic bacteria and other organisms that need oxygen to live. When you start going deeper than that, it starts to shift into anaerobic types of life. And so if we are plowing or rototilling or something too deep, we're bringing up those anaerobic organisms and sticking them up where there's just plenty of oxygen, and we're putting all of the aerobic bacteria, shoving it down deeper where there isn't enough air and they don't survive very well. So there is value in working the soil. I know that. But I think sometimes we get over aggressive and maybe go too deep. Um, and there are plenty of people that will argue on both sides of the fence about till, no till, things like that. But in my mind, I think it's a healthy thing to work that soil up periodically and get some more oxygen down into the soil, move things around a little bit. Um, but that's one of the errors we can make is mixing up the higher level soil with the lower level soil and making it so the microbes don't function very well because of what we mechanically did to the soil. So that's one factor. I think another thing is in the spring, it's really hard not to go out and get going on your garden as soon as you possibly can. And sometimes in the spring, it's too wet to get out there. And if you go out into your garden with a tractor, or if you have a bigger homestead or a farm and you're out there with heavier equipment and it's too wet, you can cause yourself problems for like 2 or 3 years after that. Just because you squished everything down, you got a whole bunch of air squeezed out of the soil structure, and you've damaged the microbes. So working the soil when it's too wet, that's another like major mistake that I think a lot of homesteaders can make.
It's hard to not like get excited, but luckily I live in North Idaho where they make that if the state makes the choice for me, I haven't even walked out to my garden yet this year.
Yeah.
I could probably have some like greens growing out there and stuff right now, but I was like, let's say I'm helping the pollinators by not touching it this year.
Yeah, there you go.
Um, so for the main reason that we till, like on our homestead, and we have like a small garden with raised beds, and then we have a larger garden that I plant some of my, squashes that spread out, and also our orchard like surrounds it and stuff. That one's probably about a quarter acre large. So I mean it's pretty decently sized. The reason we till that one the most is because the weeds are so bad here.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, we actually went out to one of our flower beds in early spring. We were trying a little test out there, and my son pulled anything that was already coming up, and then we put down pre-emergent, and we now have 7 foot tall weeds.
Mhm.
We did a wonderful job. And so,
Yeah.
with the gardens, I mean, there's no way we could get out there and actually start gardening without ripping that up because the weed bed is so dense. Whether we hand weeded or mowed, even if we mowed, I mean, we would have this mat so deep that I would barely even be able to grow or to dig a little hole to plant something.
Hmm.
And I know you talked a little bit about some different weed control tips that, I mean, we've used a ton, and we try to keep it as chemical free as possible. I don't put any
Hmm.
chemicals in my garden, but I will sometimes use them like along the road where like the cows can't get to it and stuff.
Hmm. Right. Here's a book here. You're going to see it
All
backwards
right.
probably, but it's Weeds Control Without Poisons by Charles Walters. And
Okay.
I really like that book. It looks at why those weeds are there, what they're doing to the soil. And a lot of times when we have excessive weed problems, I mean, you're always going to have weeds that are blowing in and maybe rhizomes coming in the side of your garden and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So weeds are always going to be there. But when it's actually a problem and you're going, oh, those weeds again, and you're spending too much time weeding, it's usually because the soil is not balanced right.
Okay.
And there are some weeds that, well, actually, most weeds really like a tight, compact soil. And um, sometimes, depending on the weed, just adding calcium can make a big difference in loosening up that soil so that it can um, harbor more aerobic bacteria. It has more airspace, and the root systems of those weeds really don't like that environment, and they just kind of go away, or at least they back way off. And sometimes, like if you drive by a field that has just got tons of Canadian thistle in it, that is almost always a case of not enough calcium in the soil.
Huh.
And if they were just to start adding calcium at the appropriate rates, those thistle problems would just go away, instead of being a nightmare. Uh,
That would be the dream.
yeah, so that's one of the reasons
I'm
why
currently
I,
being overtaken by catnip.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly what drives that, but that's something we could definitely look into.
It's
Um,
sticky and it smells.
yeah. Yeah, soil testing for me is pretty foundational
Okay.
in understanding what we should be doing with our soil. And it it can help, like I said, with the weed issues, and it helps a lot with the soil structure. So like going back to a more heavier clay-like soil that thistle and um, other weeds like that really like to grow. If you do add calcium because it's low, then what happens is the like soil platelets start to open up, and they call it floccuating the soil. And as it opens like that, you are able to get more of the oxygen in, like I was mentioning. And um, but as you continue to add more calcium, the platelets are going to get higher and higher, and eventually they have a hard time staying up, and they can collapse back on top of themselves. And then if you used calcium to open up the soil before, how are you going to do that now? You've got too much calcium. And usually, in my experience, it's a lot harder to deal with an excess of a mineral than it is with a deficiency. So we don't want to just add because it's a great thing, because too much of a good thing's usually a pretty bad thing. Um, and also, have you seen the mineral wheel, they call it? It's um a circle that has all of the, well, not all, but a lot of the elements listed around the perimeter of the circle. And then there's a line that goes from each mineral to all of the different other minerals that are, uh, I guess you could say, engaged in their activity. There are dependencies there. And some of them have like 12 or so different lines coming off of them. And so any one mineral isn't going to do a very good job in the plant or in the soil by itself. It has to have the right balance
And
of,
the mineral wheel, you said?
yeah,
I don't
it's
know that
just
I've
kind of
ever seen
generically
that.
called the mineral wheel. If you do just a search on the internet for the mineral wheel, you'll probably find a bunch of pictures of it. But one of the things there is like if you want that floccuating soil to stay open like that, one of the things that really helps is to have the right level of sulfur. And so you've got sulfur or calcium that's opening it up and sulfur that kind of holds it in place. A little more complicated than that, but um, if either one of those are not there, you can have troubles. And I also really like there are so many great analogies that people have come up with to help explain how the different minerals work inside plants. And one I like is um, calcium is the truck that carries all the minerals up into the plant. But the wheels on the truck is boron. And so you can have this great level of calcium and all these other minerals available to be brought up into the plant. But if you don't have boron at the adequate levels, you're trying to drive this truck that doesn't have wheels or has broken wheels, and it just doesn't function like you would expect it to. So you can see um, things that look like, let's say, a calcium deficiency in a plant. You might have blossom end rot on your tomatoes or your peppers. And usually people say, oh, you need more calcium. Well, maybe you do, but you could do a tissue test to find out if it's actually a calcium problem, or maybe you just don't have enough boron. And so the calcium's there at the good level, but it doesn't have the supporting boron that it needs to do its job. So uh, I know I'm kind of like with my physics degree, I maybe kind of geek out a little bit on how it all works, but a simple test.
I was actually sitting here like fully engaged and going, I wonder if anyone else thinks like it gets excited like I am right now. So,
Oh, well, to me, it's very exciting. And it's really satisfying when someone contacts me and says that they're having some kind of problem in their greenhouse or wherever it is, and we do a test, and then it comes back, and we're like, oh, well, no wonder. And all you have to do is make these few changes, and you're going to see things turn around. So for a homesteader, that's awesome because we're producing a lot of our own food. But
hmm
if you're a commercial grower, a lot of my customers are produce growers, and they depend on that for their livelihood. And
yeah.
if they have something go through their greenhouse and they lose, 1,000 plants or 4,000 plants, they're in trouble. But they don't have to be.
Yeah, that's I mean that's something I just hadn't really thought of it like that. So, and yeah, I was kind of joking before the we started recording that soil science was never my forte, even though I've taken several soil science classes. I passed them. I mean, like I got my degree, but it was just something that like it never quite like clicked for me the same way some other things did. And so I always, which for most people makes them avoid it, but for me, whenever somebody has something exciting, something that can bring it like full circle for me, I get really excited.
hmm
Um, I'm also the one who took organic chemistry after I graduated from college because I didn't like the grade I had in it in college. So, you know,
That's awesome.
And it was another one that really, really didn't click for me. And it was because in at the university, I'm taking it with, 200 nursing students, and I was an ag major. And so after college, I
Mhm.
took it again at a community college with a bunch more nursing majors, but there was only 12 of us in the class. And I was able to
Uh-huh.
like really ask the questions and find out what I need to
Hmm.
understand the course. At the time, I'd planned on going to a master's program and I needed biochem to do that. And so I was like, I cannot even begin to take biochem until I understand this class. So, we talked a little bit about the weeds with it. Um, and commercial growers, but you mentioned like, what's going into our soils, going into the plants, which is going into the animals.
Hmm.
I'd really like to talk about that one for a little bit and how those interact with each other and like what kind of meat quality you're getting from that. Because I think that could even, well, go ahead. Yeah.
Right. Well, um, I know that there have been some studies in the UK that have looked at um, the value, the nutrient value of meat over the last like 50 years or so. And some of the levels of nutrients in them are shockingly low. I know iron, for example, is one that is just way lower in today's meat than 50 years ago.
Hmm.
And certainly there are, breeding programs and things like that that are changing a bit how animals live, how they function. Well, there's the environment too, but uh, the genetics can have a big factor in how they're pulling up nutrients out of their or pulling nutrients out of their food, just like when they change the way plants grow, they change the ability of them to bring nutrients up from the ground. Um, just a little side note on that. Um, Seedless grapes, people tend to like seedless grapes.
Mhm.
I like them better. But why are they seedless? They're seedless because
There's definitely a
manganese,
design flaw there.
yeah, there is a design flaw in my opinion. But in order for grapes to form seeds, they need enough manganese. And manganese is an important fertility-related mineral. It's important for fertility in humans and in animals and in plants. And it helps form the seed in the grape. And so if you can do something um, to make it so that grape plants cannot bring up enough manganese, then they just won't be able to form a seed. And there is, a seed in them if you, bite in or cut one
Mhm.
open, but it's kind of a wimpy little, not really formed
Usually
seed, and
soft. Yeah.
it's no good. And so I'm thinking, wow, do I want to be eating grapes that are from a plant that doesn't know how to bring manganese up very well into itself? Like God designed them to have seeds,
Yeah.
and the seeds are actually very good for you. Um,
And what
but
else is it
anyway,
doing to that plant
yeah,
if
I've
it's
never
getting that
dug.
blocked?
Yeah, I haven't dug into that very deeply, so I don't know how different a seedless grape is from a regular grape as far as nutrients are concerned, but it concerns me a little bit.
Well, like you said, they were designed a certain way, which
Yeah,
then for us to eat them, we were designed a certain way, and we need the nutrients from the things that were designed for us to eat.
right,
And if they are altered too much, they're no longer doing their job
right,
or possibly being a negative effect.
right,
So
right.
I can definitely agree with you on that. I mean,
Mm.
I know in college at one point we went really deep into studying um what the omega fatty acids in like grass-fed versus
Hmm.
grain-fed cattle. And even to this day, like when we did the study, it was a very small margin. So the argument was it really doesn't matter that much. But to this day, I look at it and we're getting ready to butcher a steer that has only ever eaten grass grown on our property.
Hmm.
And I'm not fertilizing my soil or anything like that. We're just on good grass. They get a little bit of hay from the neighbors, but it's grown right here too. and I know
Hmm.
exactly what it is, and I know exactly what's going on in it, good, bad, or indifferent, I don't know if I'm buying grain at a commercial, um, from a commercial feed store. I don't know what's in that grain.
Right.
And it could be some of these things that you're talking about where there could be those deficiencies. And even the grain I buy from my local grain mill, they're buying theirs. Where are the producers that are literally in the field, in the valley below me getting their seed and, so on and so forth. So it's like there's that if I when there's literally nothing going into the grass that like my cows are eating and I'm also not taking anything from it, it's like a more pure form of it. So, I mean, that's my thoughts at least.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth in that. And when you look at different hay tests, when people are selling hay, some people are very willing to have their hay tested before
Mhm.
they sell it to you. Others aren't so interested in doing that. Uh,
Right?
but when you do look at different forage samples, they actually can range a lot in the quality and the nutrients that are going to be available to an animal. And so you can get away with feeding lower quality hay, um, but then you usually have to supplement with minerals and um,
Hmm.
other fortifying agents to make it work.
Yeah.
Um, so just
Well, and I
that
run dairy cows
knowledge,
with my beef cows, so there's always minerals out, but
yeah, right. So the same thing, we have forest steer all the time here that we're rotating through pairs. Um, and all they get is what's out there in the field.
Mhm.
And they're awesome. They do really well. They're
Yeah.
never,
I mean, we haven't seen
never
any problems
problems.
in with what we're eating. And one thing that I do really see, like you were talking about the genetics of animals, is, we raise old line pigs too.
Oh, uh-huh.
And what I really love to see is what our meat looks like compared to the meat you buy at the store.
Mhm.
And on and off, a lot of times I'm feeding, even not even at the store, because we've raised, like Yorkshires and stuff that my kids bought for show projects or something like that. And I'm literally feeding them the same feed from the same feed mill. And the commercially bred ones versus our old lines their meat's a different color. It's a different consistency. It's a different flavor completely on the exact
Mhm.
same feed.
Right.
So even what those animals are doing with it, when we talk about what minerals are going into the plants, but even the changes with the plants, like the magne, I can never say that one. In the grapes, if you're changing the way your animals produce, you're going to end up with a different product completely as well. So, I mean, and
Hmm.
maybe they're not producing
Hmm.
the same nutrients as they would have from the
Right.
animals that like the old line ones from before the 50s and things like that. So
Hmm.
I only say the 50s because that's when they started changing the pork genetics. So you had mentioned a little bit about what are you looking for new ways to advertise your business? I would like to invite you to advertise your business on the Homestead Education Podcast. Did you know that 60% of listeners will make a purchase after hearing an ad on a podcast? Why is this? Because personal connections and credibility from someone they truly trust will give you the best conversions. My podcast has been on the air for over 3 years now, and with an average of 5,000 downloads per episode and tons of long term listeners, you're bound to have somebody who will find that credibility in me. All ad spots will be promoted on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and my weekly newsletter. I have podcast sponsorship spots available that are affordable for all business sizes. And all advertising revenue will be used towards my educational outreach in the form of travel costs, curriculum development, supplies, and the administration of such activities. Go to my show notes now or visit thehomesteadeducation.com/podcast dash sponsorship. I hope to hear from you soon. The nutrients in food is today versus what was it, like 50 years ago?
Yeah, about 50 to 80 years ago.
Yeah. So what are we seeing there?
Um, well, I've seen some studies done where they compare. Do you know who Dr. William Albrecht is? Uh,
No.
I believe he was the soil department head at the University of Missouri quite some years ago, and he's since passed away. But he did a lot of research on soil health and human health and some of the relationships between that and livestock health. He's got I don't think he wrote any books, but he had lots of notes that Charles Walters pulled together, if I understand right, into different volumes. And I have one actually right here on my desk. Um, it's called Soil Fertility and Animal Health, the Albrecht Papers, Volume 2. And there are um, so many interesting things that he studied. And one of the things that he did is he sent students around the world collecting samples of soil. And so sometimes it was coming from like very arid land, sometimes it was coming from a rainforest, farmland, um, in towns, anywhere. And they would spin out the humus from that. And most of us are trying to build the organic matter in our soil because when we do, the crops seem to do so much better. Well, he actually like extracted that, the humus, which is fully broken down organic matter, and tested it to see what the mineral makeup of that was. And it was almost exactly the same no matter where it came from in the world. And
Really?
and it's also very close to the mineral makeup of a human body would be. Um, and and so there are some tests done where they grow things the way that Dr. Albrecht recommends, where you're really focused on the soil health, at mineral balance and the biological activity in the soil. And so growing it that way, and then growing it, not to slam universities, but at the time, the university's best recommendation for how to grow great tomatoes, great cabbage, great lettuce, great green peppers. And then they
Well,
did
I mean, a
tests.
side note on that, I think that there's a little bit of a disconnect coming up with the universities versus what is happening like in this like a more small scale farming and it's coming apart and people are starting to
Right,
try to want to pull that back together. So,
right. Yeah. And so they tested the the outcome of those test plots and tried to find out how different were they going to be. And they were hugely different. And I'm kind of glancing over at a chart here. Actually, it's kind of sideways. But
yeah,
snap,
I do put this on YouTube. So if you have something to show,
yeah. Well, I don't know if I can,
oh,
I can really be able to see my chart too
oh,
well.
okay. Well, yeah, I
But
mean, we can see what it's.
snap beans grown the Albrecht method um, had 40.5 units of calcium. Grown the university's way, the conventional way, was 15. So from
Wow.
going from 15, you can get it, you could be better off by having 40 units of calcium in there. And the magnesium in those same beans went from 14 up to 60. And from potassium went from 29 to 99. I mean, that's crazy. Um, and some of the bigger differences I've noticed are in some of the things like B vitamins. And I kind of get hung up on this one myself because I think of all of the depression and emotional distress that seems to be so common everywhere we look today. And
Hmm.
a lot of times people do a lot better if they can just increase their B vitamin intake.
Well, I kind
And
of just, as soon as you started saying that, I said, like, nobody has their happy vitamins.
right. Well, we used to get our happy vitamins from our food.
Hmm.
We didn't have to go take vitamins in pill form. And
Uh-huh.
not that people didn't, but what if you were going to get 10, 20, 50, maybe even more times certain minerals, certain vitamins, just by how you decided to grow your food.
Yeah. So
That's huge.
what is the Albrecht method or a
Well,
synopsis
eh,
of it?
you can't, I don't think you could say like, here's the method and they're
Right.
like
That's what I was like, or a
bullet
synopsis of
points.
it.
But
Yeah.
it is kind of regenerative
Hmm.
agriculture in its core essence. And it's looking at how to protect the soil, how to make sure that the soil has vibrant life in it and that it's got soil structure that supports biology and that the minerals are balanced right. And so he looked at um, the cations like calcium and magnesium and potassium and hydrogen. And he looked at what the balance was in all that humus. And he said, well, what if we just try to balance regular soil, the top 6 inches of soil, like it's humus? And so he said we should have, it depends a little bit on the soil, but generally about 68% of the base saturation should be calcium and 12% should be magnesium. And you might be looking at about 6%, 5 to 6% for potassium. And um, just trying to get those things in balance made a huge difference in what was actually coming off of those fields. Um, and also, this is another little thing that I found interesting over time is um, if a crop is healthy, pests, we talked about weeds, but pests
Hmm.
don't seem to like healthy crops. And a lot of times it's that the sugar levels are too high in them and the sweetness is too good. And so the pests don't want it.
Huh.
And I've seen uh, 3 rows of potatoes that were heavily mulched, 3 rows of potatoes next to it that had no mulch on it. And the mulch was actually horse manure and it was fairly fresh. So there was a lot of nitrogen going down into the ground there. And the potatoes that were nitrogen rich were covered with potato beetles. And the ones right next to it, like right next to it, had pretty close to zero. Any bugs that landed there and chewed just went right over to the ones that were over nitrogen. Too much nitrogen makes plants weak. And
Mm.
anything that you do that makes the plant weak makes them more attractive to the pests. And it's almost like the pests are the cleanup crew that's designed to go get rid of garbage that we probably shouldn't be eating anyway. Um, and if we can increase the health of the plants, the bugs just don't have a whole lot of interest in it. If there's nothing else to eat, they may, stay around, but generally they'll look for better hunting, I guess, better grounds for they're suitable to them.
That's interesting. I'm like sitting here thinking because we only have one pest problem, and it's some little bugs that really love my lettuces. And it just makes me wonder, like, because all my other plants do really well on that pest on the pest front. Like,
Hmm.
I wonder what we could possibly change. I am rotating beds this year, so maybe I'll see some differences. But
Hmm.
so, like, right now, what should people do? Like, how do we get our soil tested? And then how do we amend? Because I think that that's a big, um, I mean, do you just go dump it on and walk away? Like, I'm playing a little dumb, but
Yeah. Well, um, I do think, yeah, I do think soil testing is like the foundational step. And uh, for people that have a large farm and have a lot of acres, there are ways to do it cost effectively where they don't have to test everything every year and they can
Mhm.
kind of have a rotational plan on how they manage their soil differently than you would if you had a homestead. And on a homestead, um, your family's food's coming off of that ground. And so I would want to be doing the best job I could with my own soil. And um,
Well, and I mean, alternatively, like I sell to local people who are
Right,
expecting that if they're buying it from my farm, it's a higher quality product than what they're getting from the grocery store.
right, right. And when you care about those people personally, they're, in your community, you want them to be healthy and you want what you give them to be of not just better quality than what they can get in the store, but of a level of quality that really is going to contribute to their health. And so, yeah, testing that ground and looking at what the balances are there makes a huge, huge lot of sense to me. And you can get soil tests anywhere from like $12 to $180. And the $12 ones don't really give you enough information to make good decisions. The 100 and plus dollar ones, to me, don't seem like they don't give you the extra value that some people think that they do. And that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
But
Like if you were me, would you go down to the garden store and grab one, or would you like send it off to your like land grant college?
I would do neither.
Okay.
Uh, I would send them to Brookside Labs in Ohio.
Brookside.
And
Okay.
there are some other good labs too. And that's the one that I use. And on my website, I have a free downloadable guide. It's called something like Why and How to Test Your Soil. And
Okay.
it gets at some of the reasons why you would want to do it, some of the reasons we've been talking about here, and then also shows you exactly what you do to collect the soil and how you can send it off to any lab. Um, and if people wanted to do that with us, they could get worksheets from us to send straight to the lab. But when the test results come back, they come with recommendations for how much of the different amendments you should put on. And, like I said earlier, sometimes people find a good thing and maybe they add a bunch of calcium one year and they notice some real improvements. And so they just think they should do that every year. And it probably is a good idea for a couple of years. If it made a big difference the first year, it probably will for a few years. But at some point, if you just keep doing that same thing without checking what the balance looks like, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot and end up really sorry that you did that. Um, so on a garden and homestead, I would say test every year. And they cost about 30 to $35
Not bad.
to get a test done. And it just gives you so much insight in what you should be doing. Um,
What about
and
like my pastures?
mhm.
So should I
Yeah,
be testing those too?
I would do a pasture probably every 3 years.
Okay.
Hmm. Yeah.
All right. Because yeah, we do our rotational pastures. And there's one that just gets destroyed every year because it's the one closest to the barns. That's where they live in the wintertime.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, I've got to figure out how to like get some health back on that because we always run out of hay before that pasture starts growing.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, we've got to get I've got to get that pasture a little healthier because all the others are just beautiful and that one is sad.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, there are a lot of things you can do. I mean, there are some really good natural fertilizers that aren't that expensive. And if people do have pest problems that um, seem like they're always an issue, if you if you try to correct that by fixing the soil, that's the right approach, but it can take a while. And so sometimes you have to
Give it a
use
boost.
Band-Aids, basically,
Yeah.
And so I like neem oil.
Okay.
There are other oils that seem to be really helpful against pests. There's some cinnamon oil products out there. I like those. Um, yeah, neem oil. Garlic oil is really good too.
All right.
Um, and some of those products we have available. There are other companies that have similar things too.
I use
Um,
the neem oil on my orchards,
mhm.
and they seem to do pretty good.
Yeah, I think it makes a big difference.
Yeah. Definitely a big difference from when we first moved on the property. It hadn't been farmed in several years, and all my trees would get those they look like cobwebs, but it's a
The tent worm.
yes, thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, I'm apparently am tired today. So yeah, we started using the neem oil on those, I think in the spring. My husband handles
Oh,
that one. And so, and I last year we were actually had good fruit and hardly any of the tent worms. So
mm,
we're definitely seeing a difference from that.
mhm.
Um, all right. So your mineral company, tell us a little bit about it. Like, do you guys ship and small scale? What do you guys?
Yeah, a lot of the products that we carry are either from New York or from the state of Mississippi.
Hmm.
Um, and and mostly I consult with farms that are and homesteaders that are in Wisconsin and then
Okay.
just kind of leaking out into bordering states. Um, and we have helped people all across the country and we do can ship things out there wherever people are. And sometimes we'll just refer you to someone that's got the same products that we have that just
Hmm.
are closer, depending on, where a person is at.
Yeah, like if I'm fertilizing my garden bed, I could probably get it from you. But if I need to fertilize 10,000 acres, maybe like just find out who I should get them from.
Right. And we can also, set things up so that the manufacturer can ship things straight to
Okay.
people. Um, and that's usually pretty cost effective for larger acreages. We have some farms that, will buy a whole semi-load
Hmm.
of fertilizer of one kind. Um, the kind of our flagship product, if you want to call it that, um, is a naturally mined clay that
Hmm.
comes out of Mississippi. And when you look at the terrain in that area, you see kind of hills and stuff like that, but there's a fair amount of flat in between the hills. And when they actually start digging down and exploring under the surface of the ground there, they see that those hills actually continue going down, and there are actually a lot of deep, deep valleys that are hundreds of feet deep. They just happen to be filled in. And when you look at what that material is and the consistency of it, it looks like, in my opinion, it was all dead plant material and everything that was laid down during the time of Noah's flood. And then everything was rapidly buried there. And there was a bit of an iron cap that kind of settled out on top that kept the pressure off of that plant material and animal material, um, so that it didn't decompose all the way down to, let's say, a coal or maybe an oil. It stayed at a prehumate state. So it's a clay that just happens to be very, very rich in trace minerals and also very rich in biology. So when they open up the ground and the air comes down in there, all that biology kind of reawakens and they take it out and age it and kind of like composting it, and that biology just really starts churning. And they age it anywhere from 3 to 6 or so months, and then that's an awesome fertilizer. If they age it longer, the biology ramps up high enough that if you actually eat it, like if we feed it to a livestock, it stimulates their GI tract and gets all the microbes well balanced there. So the same product, just a little bit different aging, makes a great fertilizer or a great livestock supplement. So
Wow.
that's one of the products that we recommend a lot. Um, and you can find more about that on our website if you're interested.
Yeah. So, tell us what your website is.
It's Wisconsin
Mhm.
Mineral Solutions.com.
.com. And you said that you have that free download on testing your soil and that type of stuff.
Right.
I'll make sure I definitely link that because I'm gonna go check that out myself.
Yeah. Yeah. There's another free download there that people can get. It's called The 5 Questions to Ask for Good Food. And
Ooh.
so, if we have our own homesteads, or even if we live in town and we have our own garden, we can produce a lot of really good food for ourselves, but we probably still have to get other food other places.
Hmm.
And for people that are in a city and really don't have the possibility of growing maybe any of their own food, I still want them to be able to find good food.
Yeah.
And so if they go to a farmer's market, you can get really good food at a farmer's market or not so good food at a farmer's market. So I had a list of 5 questions I put together that they can ask someone else that's growing their food for them, or ask your own self if you're growing your own food that can kind of lead you down the path of getting a high quality source of food for yourself and for your family.
I love that. That is such a great idea. I cannot wait to go check these out.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, even us who we grow 75 to 80% of our food, I'm still buying my wheat from other people
Hmm.
and I being able to know that I'm getting the best quality.
Hmm.
So I really appreciate that. One of my favorite questions to ask everybody at the end of our episodes is what does keep growing mean to you?
Keep growing. Yeah, that's a good question. Um,
So
well,
faceted.
I like the old adage that says, "When you're done learning, you're done." And I think to keep growing really means to continue to learn new things, to be open to new ideas, and maybe grab old ideas that really worked well and somehow we threw them away over time, and just being open to continuing to expand our capabilities and our knowledge. And to do that, you kind of have to have a certain level of humility.
That that is something that not enough people have.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate your time today, and I don't think you know how much I enjoyed this. So,
Oh, good. I'm really glad.
everybody, go check out what they have on their website. It sounds like some really great information. And remember, what goes into your soil is what you're consuming. So, thank you very much.
That's right. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me today at the Homestead Education, and I hope that I have given you something to think about this week. To help others find me, please comment and leave a review on your favorite podcast player. You can also follow me on Facebook at the Homestead Education and Instagram at Homestead_education. Do you have questions that you would like answered or just want to say hi? Please email me at hello@thehomesteadeducation.com. Until next time, keep growing!